shit is it, Frank?
And right now, I'd like to extend an invitation to you to sit back, relax, and join me in what I hope you'll find to be is the best and the best of taste. So let's listen, shall we?
In the beginning, I never really imagined I would be in the position I currently am. When it comes to tagging, my path has never been more clear. But I guess if we take it all the way back to the beginning, definitely started here. I remember always coming out here as a kid. We would call it the view, and we would just come out here any time of the day and just look out into this vast city, which is where we grew up, and just take it all in, take in the buildings, take in the beauty, but also the grittiness of the city. Appreciate every little detail. I think is key in, finding inspiration in the small things. Me growing up, I have some faint memories of the first house we lived in. It was definitely a smaller house, and that's kind of a little bit more of where my older siblings kind of grew up. I remember my mom telling me stories of my siblings were growing up in the other house, that my dad would sometimes bring home like a box of like a bucket of KFC or whatever. My dad, even though he brought it, he would be the last one to eat. And usually it was just like bones, just small things to show that he cares for us, he loves us. Seeing my dad and how creative and how ambitious he was with his projects definitely was a huge influence. Just because he's an all-around like creative architect and just do and build anything you need, pretty much. And my mom, she was always super supportive of anything I ever did.
Pues apoyarlo, o sea, si él era lo que él quería, nosotros siempre lo apoyamos y lo impulsamos, y siempre le he dicho que luche por sus sueños y que nunca deje de soñar.
My parents are both Mexican immigrants. They came here with nothing, didn't know the language, and just came here and just worked their ass off because that's all they knew how to do. That's all they could do, because they had to support my siblings. Seeing their hustle, seeing their work ethic, especially through my dad, like he was working almost 24/7 in order to put food on the table. And my mom would take on jobs, but it was jobs that, it was construction and it was house cleaning. Made a point to always make money in order to come home and provide for their kids. So seeing that kind of upbringing definitely made me appreciate what I was blessed with. They weren't able to, pursue necessarily things that they wanted to, but they had to pursue things that they had to do. And for me, they always said, do what you want to do, and the money will come. The thing I'm most passionate about is my artwork, and that's why I keep pushing, that's why I keep working, because I don't just owe it to them, but I owe it to myself, prove to myself that yes, if they could do this, why can't I? After high school, I went directly into the Kansas City Art Institute. That's when I started to really learn a lot more about the life of an artist, business side of art, brands, all of this other things that I was missing. This is what I want to do. I'm going to learn how to do this the best way I possibly can, but I'm going to do it for myself. Sophomore year, we got to choose, what department you would go into. I ended up going into illustration, and I kind of lucked out because that was the first year that they actually brought back illustration at KCAI. And so it was a brand new program, brand new teachers, and it was just like a whole new experience. We were the people, we were the pedestal that was gonna keep building up on top of.
Oh, Layden was, he was very focused. A student like Layden comes along rarely. The quality of his work certainly put the other students on notice. I don't know that he's a perfectionist, but he always turned in highly finished professional work.
Coming here was dope, man. All the teachers that we had were amazing. They were not just like amazing instructors, but also amazing working professionals that were out in the field doing what they were teaching. So it was like we were getting hands-on experience with them.
But he seemed to early on know exactly the kind of work that he wanted to emphasize. He's a lot of things. He knows type well. He knows how to develop the image. He knows layout and design. He could function as a graphic designer. He could function as an illustrator. He could function as a lot of different things. Because of his skill set and his drive and his passion, he could be whatever he wants to be. There's not many students that come through the program that 10 years from now I'll remember their names, but I'll remember Layden's name.
So when it came to me kind of choosing the name, I got it from my siblings. You know, my brother, my older brother called me Dinkc, just because back then, you know, we would watch wrestling, and there was this wrestling clown, his name was Dinkc. And this guy at one time came out with like a mini me pretty much, and he named him Dinkc. And so my older brother would call me Dinkc, and so I just kind of stuck with me as I was growing up. When I was in school, we had to actually brand ourselves. And I decided I just wanted to go with Dinkc, so it's Dinkc, and it stood for Designing Illustration in Kansas City. You know, I always wanted to pay tribute to my hometown. Struggled coming up, just trying to figure out what my niche market was, you know, figuring out how I can actually offer creative services and get clients. You know, here I needed to make a name for myself. I needed to go out, I needed to constantly be working, offering services, finding new clients. And as a freelancer, you know, you don't have a secure check coming in every week. You have money coming in depending on how much you work. Career path is definitely scary. You know, there's a lot of cons when it comes to, you know, financial security, when it comes to, you know, doing this as a job full time. You know, it's not a 9 to 5, it's like a 9 to like whatever time you finish your projects. You know, tiring late hours. You know, I know a lot of my artist friends that would come up that have actual 9 to 5 jobs, and after that they would go and do their artwork because they have to turn in a commission. I definitely think that my biggest pro is that at the end of the day, no matter how much I struggle, I can be happy knowing that I did me 100%. Artistic influences, definitely looking at the work of Jose Guadalupe Posada in the skulls and calaveras, calacas, were just all about Mexican culture, and his line work I just fell in love with. You know, the stories that he would tell. He was very political, and just him being able to tell stories, but like in a way it'd also be like satire, using death as an impactful icon, but at the same time, you know, making it silly, making it funny, making it political, giving it a reason, a purpose, a statement aside from just it being death. A lot of other artists that definitely had a huge impact on me growing up were, you know, my best friend Omar and his crew, SCT, looking at Scribe, ATT, DF crew, KE, Psych, Mad, Epic Uno, Chris RWK, Clog 2, Nichos, Woes, Burn 353, and you know, the list goes on and on, but I definitely have to say my top artist that I look up to is Mike Giant. You know, him and his work are just impeccable. His line work, his black and white skills are just amazing, and I definitely look up to him and strive to, you know, better my skills and my trade because of, you know, what he's already doing, and I strive to reach the level that he's at. Growing up, I was always using Sharpies in my black books, you know, Sharpies, markers, anything I can possibly get that would make me a bold line, make a bold statement that you could see from far away.
He preferred more a stylized, heavily influenced by culture, black and white, really bold image. Street vibrato, contemporary street art, full of culture, history, Day of the Dead.
But I'm always constantly using, you know, oil-based Sharpie markers, the fat markers, just because it leaves such an amazing black tone and it's glossed already. Actually spray paint, you know, now that I'm getting more into bigger walls and, you know, having to work faster, spray paint is definitely a medium that I enjoy as well because it translates almost exactly like markers in a black book. And so I kind of wanted to develop a character, and then I would just change him up gradually every time. Like, let's say his eyes would be different, the decorations inside of, you know, the face would be different, his body, you know, depending on what kind of style I'm going for would be a bit different, but the face itself would always kind of remain the same. If you look at it, I wanted to make the eyes be actual exclamation points because death, no matter what, is always going to be impactful. And he has, if you look at it, he has 5 actual openings. He has the 4 eyes, and then he has the nose, and the 5 represents my name, which is Dinkc. And the teeth start to come in, and since he's at a 3/4 angle, you don't see the 5th tooth, but he actually is supposed to have 5 teeth. Again, also for my name. And then I add the tongue on the bottom, and the tongue represents, you know, my Aztec, you know, Mexican culture, and a lot of Aztec gods were kind of depicted with their tongue out. And then, you know, the character just kind of started taking off from there. I would always draw him, and in a way he kind of became my signature. You know, instead of just tagging my name everywhere, I would post him up and people would immediately see it and be like, oh, that's Dinkc. So early on, some of my earlier clients were just kind of random people that would see my work and just kind of, you know, be interested and say, oh, well, can you do this? Can you do that? You know, I got hired to do the actual Volkswagen van that's now in Ruins Pub here downtown, Kansas City. And that van was an amazing project. Like, they just gave me a fully primed, like, old school Volkswagen van and said, do your thing.
Him and I, through psych, worked on an art show at a gallery I used to run called the Culture Chameleon, focusing primarily on street artists, graffiti artists. It went over really well. And after that, I was like, you know, let's try to do some more things.
I was looking for street and graffiti artists to do different projects here, and I went to Culture Chameleon and I talked to Lee. And Lee came over and I walked him through all the different projects I wanted to do, and as soon as I told him I wanted to do black and white cartoons, he said he knew the perfect guy to paint this VW van for me. I didn't know what I wanted it to look like, and he introduced me to Dinkc and showed me some of his work, and it was like the perfect fit, so.
Layden is a beast. I mean, he's a workhorse. You know, he knocked out this whole van, I think, in a matter of like 3 days, and we're talking like Sharpies and spray paint. It went really quick.
He has a tabletop over there. He did our DJ booth. He did a bunch of wall art that's in the hallway, some wall art up around here, a couple skateboard decks. He's done all kinds of stuff. It's kind of, the restaurant's kind of dinked out, really.
Honestly, every time he steps to a canvas or anytime he steps to a project, man, I'm always thoroughly amazed on how it turns out. His line work is flawless. He makes it look really easy, and I mean, I love his style.
He's one of the rare guys that kind of can take that talent and infuse it with just this cultural background of street art. He takes it all and he still pushes it out there. He still makes a living. He's always on a new job. He's always perfecting his craft. He's just definition of a good hustler.
Who is this masked marvel? That's right. Who is he? Why, don't tell anybody, but he's the champ. The champ? Why, he's so tough looking, when people looks at him, they faint. That's why he wears a mask. Oh, my. Are you sure you're strong enough to beat him? Am I strong enough?
Oh, shit, is that Frank?
I assume, was to start to travel, try to see what other kind of response I would actually get outside of Kansas City. And at the time, my girlfriend, she moved out to New York, and she was living there for a year, doing fashion design and all this stuff. And she convinced me to come out there for at least a month just to try it out. And yeah, it was definitely nerve-wracking, but nonetheless a challenge. Tried it out for a month and checked out the scene. Got mad love from people. Everybody was so, supportive in the sense of, helping me out as an artist and showing me kind of the ropes, showing me the galleries, taking me to shows, introducing me to people. Once I ended up going to New York, leaving Kansas City, I changed the name again. The acronym now stands for Death is Not Knowing Certainty. And that kind of plays a huge part into my brand with skulls, life and death. As in Kansas City, people know me as Laidan. So when I moved to New York, I just kind of started going by Dinkc. Like I was just any art event, any sort of thing, I would just go up and introduce myself as Dinkc. Now in New York, pretty much only know me as Dinkc. And it's just really cool just to, get that sort of recognition and continue to push my brand, continue to grow. And it just kind of started to evolve and it started to move forward just as it was here in Kansas City, except there it was at a different speed. In Kansas City, I would do a couple shows, 1 or 2, like maybe in 2 months or so throughout like First Fridays. But there, it was starting to develop like every 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, maybe even weekly, I would start getting opportunities. And these were opportunities that you definitely can't sleep on, just because they move at such a different speed that if you miss out or you sleep on any opportunity, the guy right behind you is definitely gonna step up. One of my first shows that I had, I got to be part of a group show in Grand Central Station at this really dope store called Pick. And they had this group show called Twisted Mouse, where they invited this amazing group of artists to pretty much depict Mickey Mouse in any sort of twisted, crazy way that they saw fit, that fit their style. And I was able to, turn in a canvas piece, I got like a really, really great response. I was signing people's books, and from there I kept doing shows. I would start to get invited to different group shows. From there I started getting some walls. I did some stuff on the rooftop of Paper Factory Hotel out in Long Island City. I've done shows in Chicago, I've done shows in LA. The more I painted, the more response I got, the more opportunities, the more I moved forward. Yeah, so in New York, like pretty much they have this dope block party. It's the Bushwick Block Party, but they bring in like amazing artists, from around the world, and local artists as well, and they kind of set them up with walls where there's just a crowd, huge crowds of people just going around, everybody super artistic, and you just see these dope artists just painting walls. You get to see process, you get to see and meet and greet and all these amazing people that, maybe you've never been able to see before outside of social media. And I decided to go because I live in Bushwick, so I was just a couple blocks away from the actual party. I see this dope spot. It's just like this nice little wall, and there's a couple other artists painting over here. But nobody's touching this wall for some reason. Take my cans out and just start painting. Like everybody else was painting. It was the perfect time. And I just rocked out this piece in like an hour or so. And it's been one of my pieces that's been like mostly recognized in New York. That sort of opportunity was just completely random, completely like spur of the moment. And being sure of yourself and showing the world that this is who I am. The wall was there, I was there. Why not do something with it?
Oh shit, is that Frank?
I'm going to tell y'all a little story about how Solo Crew got started. So I might be reaching, but I'll say about maybe 2 years back, the first time I met Dinkc was at a show called Pick Products. It was being hosted at Grand Central Terminal in Manhattan. And I showed up just to support a few buddies of mine, really talented artists who had work in the show. And that was the first time I met Dinkc. I guess he was new to the town. I hadn't seen his artwork before. And, I'm the kind of guy, when I go out to shows, I'm very keen on looking for, new artists just to check out in terms of looking for inspiration. And the first thing I noticed about his work was the attention to detail, really great line quality, really clean. You almost couldn't even tell it was, handmade. From there, I caught him at a few other events. We did events through Boundless Brooklyn, etc. And we realized at some point we were two like-minded young guys. We both really had a crazy passion for what we do. We thought that maybe we could make a splash and kind of do some really interesting things if we started a collective, our own collective. We kind of would move forward with was recruiting artists that really cared about the quality of their work. We wanted to recruit guys that were just talented and really cared about the craft of making art, craft of drawing, painting, spray painting, stenciling, whatever it is, that you do. That was the basis on us forming the Solo Crew. And the name itself means basically every individual that would be in Solo Crew is self-sustaining. So every guy is solo. You work solo. We're out here hustling. We make our work. We sell. We show, but at the same time, we can come together and lean on one another, whether we show together, whether we have advice and just kind of provide backbones for the other guys in the group. And yeah, that's basically how it got started. As far as members of Solo Crew, right now we have a grand total of 4 guys. Starting with myself, Timo, then you have Dinkc. After Dinkc, we have my man Cubic. And our newest member goes by the name of FK Menace.
Pushing, boundaries, started to do things on our own, make our own merch, apparel, throw shows together without curators. Things are possible without having to go through the same pathways that eventually led to, one of my biggest events that I got to take part of in New York, which was the Jimador Day of the Dead battle.
evento ya arrancó. Máscara sagrada, todo de blanco, todo de blanco. Máscara sagrada.
Oh shit, is that Frank?
My boy Timo, he was originally gonna do this art battle. They bring in 6 artists for Day of the Dead, go at it for 90 minutes, paint something that's Day of the Dead related, and at the end, you know, there's 3 forms of voting. You know, the crowd votes, there's social media voting, and of course the judges. But the day of the event, he calls me in the morning and he's like, hey man, I'm sick, I can't do this. Would you be up for taking my spot? And, you know, at first I was a little hesitant, just because these artists got a month or so to plan, to prepare, to promote, to do, you know, signings and stuff for this event. And yeah, it was a little nerve-wracking, and I knew some of the artists that were in it, but this was, you know, was something that I definitely felt I couldn't pass up. It was Day of the Dead related, which is what my brand is. So I agreed. You know, I actually had to go to work that day. Like, I worked part-time at a shop, at a tattoo shop. And I had to go to work and then leave early so that I can get to the event. And I didn't have any of my markers or anything like that. And luckily my girl got to the event, you know, pretty much right before the battle, gave me my markers, I got prepped, and the buzzer went off. And everybody rushed to get started, started throwing paint on, spray painting, all this stuff. And you know, I had to take some time to just stand there and take in this moment, think about where I came from, why it is I'm doing what I'm doing. I decided I wanted to do something that would represent Day of the Dead, would represent life and death, would represent my Mexican culture, would represent, you know, my black and white work, which is what I'm starting to get known for. My markers, it was just a 38 by like 46 canvas or so. And had to go in and just freestyle this piece and have it turn into something, you know, that was me. And as I started to paint, it just kind of came together. I started in the middle, started to build off. I did one head and then finished that head completely. And I actually took the canvas off the easel, flipped it, and did the same exact head, but just upside down. And it was kind of instinctual in a way to just kind of be part of this whole event, to, you know, give the crowd something that they weren't expecting, you know, kind of like life and death, you know, you never know when you're gonna leave this world. But if you ever do, make sure that your last moments are impactful, because that's how people are gonna remember you. And if that was my last battle, my last event, my last anything, and that night, that's what I went and I did. I actually ended up finishing early, which gave me enough time to talk to the crowd, you know, show off my piece. It was just crazy just to see the kind of response that I was getting from the crowd. And it just kind of blew my mind in a way where I wasn't fully expecting, you know, what happened next. You know, and as the battle started to kind of come to an end and we took our places in the crowd, the announcers came up and they, you know, mentioned the first runner-up, and he came up there and received his prize. And at that time, I just kind of started to close my eyes and kind of drown out the crowd for a bit. And honestly, just kind of try to reflect and, you know, reminisce on my past family members, simply because it was, you know, Day of the Dead, and it's a huge part of my brand and my family and my culture. And I honestly wanted to start thinking about the piece. And you know, even though it looked fairly simple, I did have a lot of symbolism in it, and that meant a lot to me. And, you know, each and every element in there was put in there for a reason. And it just all kind of made sense at the time, you know. It all kind of fell together, and it felt like I was kind of destined to be there at this one time, at this one place, to prove, you know, not just to the crowd, but to myself that, you know, this is what I truly believe in, and this is what I truly want to be doing. And, you know, as I started to, you know, come back to the crowd and open my eyes, and, you know, I look up and I just honestly couldn't believe, like, what was happening.
Dinkc!
imagination is literally the workshop wherein are fashioned all plans created by man. The impulse, the desire is given shape, form, and action through the aid of the imaginative faculty of the mind.
The actual purpose of this video, more than anything, was just a recap of just everything in my life that one way or another has shaped me. Artwork and my brand and Dinkc Studios it's 100% me, and the only person that needs to validate it is myself. And yeah, you guys can look at all this video and look at the things that I've done, and you know, they are accomplishments to a degree. And honestly, I think that everything up to this point has prepared me and did prepare me for, you know, that one random event, that one crazy event, which was the Himador art battle. This was a once in a lifetime. And yeah, winning was amazing. It was one of the best feelings ever. And honestly, I remember thinking that one moment right before they called my name, just reminiscing of every single thing that has led up to that single point and thinking how grateful I was. I've gone through so much amazing, you know, instances in my life that have shaped me, and just being thankful for everybody that I've met up to that point, and everybody who supported me, everybody who's bought something, you know, gone to my shows, any sort of small little thing. I was just eternally grateful at that moment. Even if I wouldn't have won, I knew I accomplished and put everything I needed to onto that canvas. So, you know, every time I finish up an event, a show, an appearance, you know, whatever it may be, I always take a time right after or the day after to reflect on, you know, the success, the failures of the day, but never forgetting where you came from, you know, your traditions, your cultures, the things that made you, and trying to figure out, you know, your past and how it's going to influence your present in order for you to build a future. So, you know, my next step from here, well, I guess you'll just have to wait and see.
Just because you left and said
Shit, is that Frank?
do you think that I will sit in? Cause you left, sitting. Cause you left, sitting. And do you, and do you, and do you, and do you, just because you left and said
That's good.
So, are you ready?
Yep.
So this is a quote from Guillaume, and I have phonetic spelling there so I can pronounce it right. Guillaume Apollinaire. And you can infer whomever it is that's giving these orders. It's not necessarily a professor, but come to the edge, they said. And those that were asked to come to the edge, we can't, we're afraid. Come to the edge. We can't, we will fall. And then a third command, come to the edge. And they came, and he pushed them, and they flew. So that's what that was that Layden was talking about. I took more time in that speech than I was allowed, but I felt like they deserved it.